The Love Your Body podcast is brought to you by Danny D Fitness, along with Cinema 83, and our featured sponsor, Music City FitCon, presented by Core and Health Fitness. If you're looking to come to the next Move Fit pop-up, it's actually happening at the Music City FitCon in October. So I actually have a deal with them going on for $30. So you can come get your Move Fit on and come to my panel discussion, which is going to be epic. So I'm very excited about it. You can find the deal on my Instagram. Link is in my bio. It's going to be an awesome event. You can actually get CECs. So if you're somebody looking to start your healthy lifestyle journey, if you're looking to start teaching, training, you can come take class all day long. But I will be speaking and doing Move Fit that day. So I'd love to see the Music City FitCon. For those of you who've seen my new LYB gym, you've seen all the amazing equipment in there. My Stairmaster as well as my RXD bench came from Core and Health Fitness. And I'm so honored and excited to have them as a sponsor for this podcast, as they believe in the mission that everyone should move their body and love their body throughout their journey. If you're looking to add pieces of equipment to your home gym, you can reach out to Tony Gray. He's my contact at Core and Health Fitness. His contact is tgray@corehandf.com. So tell him I sent you and that you heard about him and heard about Core and Health Fitness on the Love Your Body podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Love Your Body podcast. On today's episode, we have Megan Crozier. Is that his last name?
Yep. Crozier. You made it a little fancier than
it
actually is,
but I mean, it sounded kind of fancy, so I don't know. But a little bit about Megan. She's a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner. After experiencing the consequences of conventional approaches, you like how I sound so like whatever reading this, experiencing the consequences of conventional approaches to nutrition and health firsthand, she started her own private nutrition practice where she takes a functional approach to help women support their hormones, metabolism, and gut health without diet rules and restriction, which I love. She helps her clients create a sustainable, enjoyable approach to health, one that doesn't involve dieting or following a lot of the health misconceptions and myths that are out there. Her goal is to empower people to be in the driver's seat of their health by helping them understand what their body truly needs to thrive and figure out what approach is best for them so they can feel strong, energized, and confident in their body. And I love that. Welcome. Yeah. I'm so glad to have you, girl. I reached out to you because I had seen you on Jesse's podcast, but also I think like an Instagram reel had came up and I was just like, man, this girl knows her stuff. And like, it's just, I have been in this industry for so long and it was so refreshing. So I just wanted to applaud you on like it being very clear, concise with things that you do. And I'm sure that just completely plays in a part in, you know, your passion for how you help people. So that's why I wanted you to come on today and kind of help me as well with all this, you know. Everyone that's been listening to Love Your Body podcast, I know kind of my stuff that's been going on with the prep of the shows and just like health and everything like that. And I know there's a lot of strong, you know, young female entrepreneurs out there listening as well that are just like, how do I do it all? Mm-hmm. How do I bounce? Or even moms. I mean, just like people I train every day. I mean, they're just running themselves ragged as well. Yeah. And that seems to kind of be your specialty and people you work with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that was me.
Okay. Yeah.
Still is from time to time, right? It's like it's a journey. You're always working on yourself. But I, like you mentioned in the bio, I did a lot of the kind of eat less, exercise more, driving my body into the ground, sort of like not really knowing the damage that it was doing to my body and my hormones, which I know we'll talk more about and all that good stuff. But that's what kind of made me actually niche down to working with other, I call them kind of like recovering type A perfectionist individuals, women who like to do it all. They're high achievers, high performers. You know, some are entrepreneurs, some are 9-to-5ers, some are moms. They really are intentional with their health. They like to eat healthy. They work out, but they're still not feeling 100%. Like things start to feel off and they're like, I don't know why, because I'm the healthiest person I know. Right. So that was really me. And then whenever I actually went through my nutrition certification, it was a little bit more general when I started out. And what everybody comes to you for whenever it's like nutrition related, it's usually weight loss or I want to lose weight. But there's so much more to it than that. And that's why I joke around and say that I like don't only talk about fat loss, but also about poop and periods and like all those things that aren't super common to talk about. Right. But definitely a lot of women struggle in those areas.
Well, I think that too, because how old are you?
I'm 31.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, I'm 30. I just turned 30 and it's still weird.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
But it was one of those things where I think it was just like the culture was just, yes, like grind and whatever, but I've always like done that. And so I've always been like that high energy, doing everything possible. But I mean, it never affected me really. Like I was going whatever. But, and I even put myself through, when I think about it, I mean, such low calorie diet plans. I mean, so ridiculous stuff. I mean, I was working out sometimes, 4 or 5 hours a day because I was teaching classes and I was running here. I was doing this, like, doing all these different things. And I'm like, but yet I never felt the way I felt this past like year.
Yeah.
And I was like, something changed. And I don't know if it was just like internally, just finally caught up to me, like, what the deal was. But it was like, man, I finally am like settled in the house, got the LYB gym out back, like, podcasts in here, everything was like more efficient. It's like, why now? It's almost like it all just like crashed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you're describing is basically, and I see it with a lot of women, we chalk it up as like getting older,
right?
But really it is our body is running on stress hormones,
yeah,
and it's so resilient, especially in even for me, like dating back to like high school and college,
yeah,
and then our early 20s, we can be go and not feel the effects of it. And then whenever we actually do slow down and our body is like, oh wait, I'm not running on stress hormones anymore, things kind of like catch up in a way.
Yeah.
And for some people there is sort of like a trigger or a straw that breaks the camel's back, and then they go to their doctor.
Bodybuilding.
Yeah. Well, that for a while, exactly. And for some women, they are, obviously you're more intentional with it, and like you're aware of your calorie intake, your movement, all that stuff. But some women are doing it kind of unintentionally, or they're just not as strategic about it. So they're like, basically always in a cut because they're always trying to lose weight, or they do it because they're running around with their kids and they're also trying to hit the workout class and they're only sleeping 5 hours. So their body's undernourished, essentially.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess for me, it's like with what I hear from my clients, a lot of times they're like, like they're eating. And I guess my other point of what I was saying before is that like, okay, that they tell you, movement and fuel, like that's it. But then what I wanted to do with Dandy Fitness was like bring the positivity mindset into it, right? So it's like positive mindset, good fuel, good movement. Doesn't have to be perfect, right? Doesn't have to be perfect movement, doesn't have to be perfect fuel, but it does need to be like good fueling for your body and for you, not to compare, things like that. So when you put the triangle together, but it's like, okay, but also let's like open the triangle up, because now we need to look at the hormones and the stress levels and all the other factors, right? And it really does inhibit weight loss. And the cortisol levels, I think like that and the blood sugar, would you say are the two main factors that inhibit your clients from seeing the weight loss, or is it other stuff?
Yeah, it can. So those two hormones are kind of where it starts, but it can influence other things too. Okay. So, and that's where starting with those three pieces too, the mindset, the lifestyle, and I guess the movement, the mindset, and the nutrition, the fuel. Like those are really good foundational pieces, but we need to look at how are we lowering overall stress in the body with those areas.
Right.
So I would argue to say that like if you're too perfect with your nutrition or too perfect with your workouts, or you're stressing out about not being perfect, then that's gonna.
And I was
exactly. So like that adds stress to the system. And we actually, we look at the nervous system a lot, like your actual brain and how that's influencing, because that's really where hormone production starts. It's in the brain. And so if your brain's not communicating appropriately with everything else, it can throw stuff off. And that's where, cortisol really does get off when we look at how it should be throughout the day, like a natural 24-hour cycle should increase in the morning, which is when you should feel most energized. So for people who wake up and they feel super tired, they can't get out of bed, that's usually low cortisol and also low thyroid hormone. So those are the two big players in like the fat loss piece. Okay. And just overall metabolism.
I was going to say, so most of those people usually have a lower metabolism with that. Okay.
Yeah. So, and it can depend too on their health history and how long they might have dieted, how much stress they've been under. Like we can go all the way back to, when they were 12 years old and maybe went on hormonal birth control because they had really heavy periods, just as an example of like how far we can go back. But we look at that and then how that's actually influencing their like current day-to-day lifestyle. So I would say in terms of like biggest hormone players, we have blood sugar hormones, so insulin being a big one, stress hormones like cortisol, and both of those influence thyroid hormones.
Okay.
And then last but not least, I think what everybody thinks about when it comes to hormones are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone.
Yeah.
So those are basically our sex hormones.
Yeah.
And those are super cyclical throughout the month. So they're not always supposed to stay the same, and that influences how we feel too.
Right. So when you do like a general like blood panel, do they look at all the things you just said, or they just look at the sex hormones? Like,
yeah. Great question. So maybe none of the above.
Okay.
Usually they'll look at one thyroid marker, which is TSH, and that's actually thyroid stimulating hormone. So it's not even your thyroid hormone, it's your pituitary hormone, like how your brain is communicating with your thyroid.
Okay.
So they'll do TSH. And then with cortisol, since it does change throughout the day, we want to look at the levels morning, afternoon, evening.
Right.
So if you go into your doctor and you're like, I want to get my cortisol tested, they might be like, okay, but like it doesn't mean anything because you're just looking at it at that one point in time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then with sex hormones in particular, you want to get them during a specific part of your cycle.
Right.
And so,
I remember you telling me that. Okay.
Yeah. And
what part of the cycle?
So if you're looking at your, basically we'll call it a 28-day cycle because that's like kind of average. You have the first phase of your cycle, the follicular phase.
Yeah.
And then the second phase of your cycle is going to be your luteal phase, which is after ovulation. You have to ovulate to get a period, which we'll dig more into that if you want to. But
please do.
That luteal phase is when you want to get your hormones checked because we want to look at progesterone in relationship to estrogen. And those are the two hormones that are often that we see off kind of as a downstream result of sluggish metabolism, sluggish thyroid hormones, high stress, things like that.
Yeah.
There can be other hormones that are off too, especially if you have other symptoms like hormonal acne, like that can be more related to testosterone and androgens and things like that. But yes, in terms of getting those sex hormones tested, you want to do it during a specific part of your cycle.
Literally. Okay, all I can think about right now is going back to like 7th grade when they did that like sex class or whatever, you know, and like I missed it. I think it was 6th grade, so I missed it.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah, but literally I'm like, this would have been the time to have done like there's four phases, right? Of a cycle.
Yep.
Yeah, like I'm glad that I'm 30 years old and like learning that, right? Like you know what I mean? Because nobody ever taught to me about this stuff.
Yeah.
I was put on the depot shot at 16.
Same.
And that was just because of like, you know, bad periods and stuff like that and like whatever. And they would just happen randomly. They were never consistent ever in my life, even with that shot.
Yep.
And then it was like, and then after that I was on birth control, low dose estrogen or whatever. I mean, I've never had a regular period in my life, but I've always been like active, but then not like in terms of like the food's not been there, or then I was like active again. And then it just, like I've put my body through so much and I get it, but it's like, that's never been a regular occurrence. And so we'll use me as an example. Like I mean, yes, with the bodybuilding, so I guess you can blame that or whatever. But since, I mean, it's been like, I think we're going on like, what, like a year and a half, if not longer, and I haven't had a cycle.
Yeah.
So like, what is the, I guess like, I just don't ovulate.
The root cause,
like
where do we start?
What's the deal here? Like,
well, and for somebody who has always struggled with irregular cycles, I think one, that's super normalized because it is so common. And I mean, I have clients who will go to their doctor at, you know, they're 12 years old and they either have really heavy periods or they're just kind of inconsistent. And that's because your body is still taking some time to figure out like what's going on.
Right.
And if we also look at how we're like eating and moving when we're a teenager, like it's not optimal. And so we're just immediately put on birth control, which essentially shuts down your hormones. So it's kind of just like putting, if you had a check engine light comes on your car, you're like, all right, I'm not going to check the engine. I'm just going to like cover it up with a piece of tape so I can't see it anymore.
Yep.
But when you take that piece of tape off, the light's still there. You still have to deal with those symptoms. So we can either one, go on hormonal birth control and kind of suppress that, especially like, I mean, during our reproductive years when we would benefit from having regular ovulatory cycles for lots of reasons, but we could suppress it, or we could figure out, okay, why am I experiencing heavy periods or irregular cycles? And that's where we look at, and it's not too late to address it, right? Even at age 31. I mean, I work with women in their 40s too, who are still like, I've been on birth control my whole life.
Yeah.
And I just want to have a regular period now.
Yes.
So that's where we really would look at the balance of estrogen and progesterone and getting those back online.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we have to look at stress, but not in kind of like the typical sense of what we think of as stress, like mental, emotional.
Right.
It's like everything.
And for all of you listening, like I just want to point this out that I have done multiple things of blood work over the past few years. Like, I mean, pretty much quarterly, right? But again, you're going at that one time of the day, at that one time, like that maybe has a marker that tells you like the best, I don't know, like the best thing. But what I've been told is like, unless you do it every day for a certain amount of time, like it's not going to be that beneficial. Like, cause my estrogen and all my levels have always been good.
Yeah.
And even when I've gone to like, even what is it? Like functional medicine type of person, right? Like they were like, yeah, like your levels are great.
Yeah.
So like, why is that?
Yeah. Well, we have to look at a lot of other factors aside from those sex hormones too.
Yeah.
I mean, you can experience low energy, irregular periods, brain fog, fatigue, sleep issues from thyroid-related issues, blood sugar-related issues too. So we have to look at those as well. And also with kind of like general blood work, you either have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's why I also recommend like ask for a copy of your lab so you can actually see the numbers, because there's a difference between the like conventional ranges of what's like okay versus the optimal ranges. Yeah. So you can be in those conventional ranges and not feel okay, but it to the doctor will look okay.
Yeah.
But when we're like, okay, how can we look at what's optimal? That's where it's like a little bit more narrow and kind of like fine tuning with that. For sure.
Which, I mean, I love that you even have these options, because I mean, you told me it's like, what is the hair test that we're gonna do?
Yeah.
What is that called?
So that's an HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis.
Okay.
And I really like looking at minerals because it kind of gets us closer to where imbalances are taking place, like why they're happening. So for example, we could look to see that, you know, your thyroid hormones are low. And so you would have hypothyroidism. But if we're figuring out why or where that's coming from, we need to look at how's your mineral status. Right. So things like potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium.
Yeah.
A lot of women are depleted in those because of either just poor diet, not eating enough, digestive issues that don't allow you to absorb those things appropriately.
Right.
Or just burning through them because of stress. So like magnesium is a great example.
Right.
So that's why I like doing the mineral test for sure. And for women who have been on birth control, especially for longer periods of time, they're usually depleted in quite a bit of minerals and vitamins as well.
Right.
That we actually need for a healthy cycle. So it's like when you come off of birth control, you have to replenish those. Yeah. That test can help to pinpoint like what we really need to focus on replenishing.
Which I think is cool, because I think a lot of people who listen and who have, you know, been on their healthy lifestyle journey, if they're like me, they were told salt was bad, right, back in the day. And then I was like, no, salt's actually good. And you should put some in your water if you're going to actually like absorb your water, right? Like versus, because I think the regular person wouldn't understand that like just drinking water is not enough. Like that you actually have to have, what do you recommend? Don't you like, it's like drops or something that you recommend to put in the water?
There's a lot of different like mineral blends that you can add to your water. Yeah.
What if somebody's just like over the counter, just wanting to put something in their water to help absorb like?
Yeah, well, as like trendy as it is now, I think doing a pinch of sea salt, like real sea salt. So Redmond's is a great brand, for example, or just like Himalayan pink sea salt. Okay. Adding a pinch of that because it has the trace minerals. It'll have sodium, potassium, magnesium. Okay. You don't want to supplement with any one mineral in excess, like in isolation. Like you wouldn't want to just do a ton of calcium or just do a ton of magnesium even, especially if it's not in the right form. Right. But yeah, adding a pinch of sea salt, or, I mean, I really like, there's a brand called LMNT, which is higher sodium. So I recommend that to athletes who are like actually sweating, maybe not for like, if you're just waking up, going to work, sitting at a desk kind of thing. And then there's another good one called pickleball, which
Okay.
it's a funny name. It's also funny because pickleball is like
Yeah,
really popular
yeah.
now, but it's higher in potassium.
Okay.
So, and that like for me as an example, my HTMA, I really needed more potassium than
Okay.
sodium. So I focus on a lot of potassium rich food sources and
Okay.
also like the pickleball, coconut water is great, things like that.
So when you say like a pinch of salt, like in a gallon of water, or like a pinch of salt in like a 20-ounce thing of water, or like...
Yeah, I mean, I would do it in like a 20 ounce.
Okay.
And that's another thing with water. A lot of people are like overdoing it. I think, well, this might be
Yeah.
more popular in like the bodybuilding community
Yes,
too, where it's
yeah.
like the more water, the better, because you're also like, you know, trying to manipulate other things as well. But you can overdo it with just plain old water and throw off your minerals.
And I think that's what happened, honestly, because I was drinking like way too much.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that I could eat my salt, but then I also didn't realize that I could, cause you know, you're so worried about over. So I like stripped all salt away like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Just because, and then started drinking like so much water. So it really does feel like that was like two of the catalysts when I think back of like even before bodybuilding and all of that.
Well, and even with like the sodium as an example, your adrenals, which are the glands that produce cortisol, your stress hormones, you need sodium for those adrenals. So for people who are super depleted too, like in that burnout stage, and I wouldn't be surprised if on your HTMA sodium shows up as like non-existent.
Probably.
But we need that, and we need it in balance with other minerals too. So
What if someone's like, well, how do I know how much salt to have like in a day? Like, what do you recommend anything, or is it very personal? Like it's on depending on like what they do in the day.
yeah. So I think kind of just like a very safe recommendation is to salt your food.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like liberally or to the point where you're eating it and you're like, this doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
If your body needs it, it'll tell you. Like
Yeah.
it actually makes it taste better too.
Yeah.
So, and also if, I don't know if you've ever noticed this with you or any of your clients, but if you crave salt, like you're like, I could really go for like potato chips or French fries with salt, or even like olive juice and pickles. I know that sounds weird, but they're higher in sodium.
For sure.
That's a sign that your body needs more sodium. So if we're listening to our body like closely, instead of just kind of like following, you know, the same thing every single day or whatever kind of rules there are, like don't eat salt.
Right.
It'll tell you what it needs.
Okay.
So
I gotcha.
but and salting your food makes it taste better too. So if you're like roasting some vegetables and you want to throw some sea salt on there, it'll help enhance the flavor.
And guys, I do like Mrs. Dash no salt like seasoning or whatever for my stuff, just add a little bit of flavor. But then I also still put salt on my food. So so people I think need to understand that too, that you can do both. And then like, you know, I add like cinnamon, red pepper, just like different things like thermogenics and whatever. But I do know that like, you know, it's so funny because like I haven't even been on a hormone-based birth control in years. So like I have the copper IUD. So the non-hormonal because of when I was doing strongman and I didn't want anything to fluctuate with weight loss for when I was doing you know, weigh-ins and weight cuts and stuff. And so it's just interesting because it's like I don't know what's worse. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I don't have a cycle and I am not on birth control, so I can't blame it on the birth control.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people, we do blame a lot of stuff on the birth control.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, you can lose your period with the copper IUD as well.
Yeah.
So, and that, I mean, it just depends on the person too. But given that you never had a regular cycle, I would be interested to see if you came off completely, what would actually how your body would respond.
And I guess for people like, so for that are wondering, because this is probably like my thing, because when I was 25, I was like, why do I need a one? Like, why do I need a cycle? Like, what is the significance? If you had to like sum it up in like a couple sentences, what would you say is the?
I mean, so I didn't mention this in my story, but I lost my period for probably 5 years, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. It was so convenient.
I didn't have to deal with the bloating.
Like what are tampons? Nothing. And so that for me, I didn't see it as an issue at the time. But understanding the importance of ovulating every single month, I think it's not even, well, bleeding is important too, because you want to get rid of excess iron, especially if that's circulating throughout your body, that's going to cause a lot of inflammation. So like that's your body's natural way of like getting rid of excess iron. But if you're not ovulating, you're not producing progesterone, which is like your anti-anxiety calming hormone. So that's why we also see a lot of women feel more anxious, have lower moods, like all of those other things that we get the benefits from progesterone and estrogen too, which is really important for especially bone growth.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to ovulate while you can, so that when you're older, you're less susceptible to things like, osteopenia, osteoporosis, things like that.
Oh, wow. Thank you guys so much for listening to Love Your Body Podcast. If you can, please like, subscribe, share this podcast with anyone that you think is good, maybe going through these struggles, can relate to our guests that we have on here. Just anybody that, we can share the mission with would be amazing. So, Megan, you got anything?
Yeah. Hey, guys. So if you want to come over and follow me on Instagram, I'm at Meg Crozier, Crozier NTP. Feel free to DM me there. If you're struggling with anything around your hormones, your digestion, your metabolism, don't hesitate to reach out. I also have a program called Well Nourished, and so you can inquire about that if you're interested in enrolling. And so happy that you're here.
Like with your clients and everything, like what is the biggest thing, like once you have gotten the mineral test done or, the blood work panels or whatever, all that you're encompassed, because I know you do so much, right? Like you have so many different tests that you have people go through. And I'm technically going through that with you with the Dutch test. And then we're going to do it as kind of sit down session, everything like that. What would be next? Like what's kind of the next thing? Like let's say that minerals are off. So you give suggestions on how to incorporate that, and then what goes from there?
Yeah. So I think it's helpful to back up a little bit to, I guess, look at the process, essentially. And with the testing, I will say there are a lot of options for testing. However, we do pinpoint it down to what is necessary and what will help us actually customize your plan more. So for some women, as an example, they might not need a GI map stool test if they are literally always eating on the go or eating a lot of foods that are hard to digest, basic things that we can start improving before even getting those tests. So I do always say that. I don't want people to think they come and then they're having to do all of these crazy expensive tests. But it's helpful to use that data to, especially if you're already doing a lot of things and you're what else could be off? It helps to see that data.
For sure.
And for a lot of people too, it helps kind of validate their symptoms. So they're my doctor said my thyroid labs are completely normal. And then we look at the thyroid numbers that they got, and there's only 2 there. So we get more, and then we can see where things are going wrong. So I will say that we want to collect the right labs that are necessary.
Yeah.
But also within that initial assessment, we're looking at a lot of symptoms, because the symptoms alone can tell us. Somebody can tell me, maybe their top 5 symptoms that they're dealing with, and we can pinpoint, is it cortisol? Is it thyroid? Is it, your estrogen, progesterone?
Yeah.
Right away, we can kind of tell where things are off, which is fun, but we can connect the dots, and then we can kind of figure out why it's all making sense. So we do that within that initial assessment. We look at a lot of symptoms. We also kind of peel back the layers and look at, again, health history, figuring out where potential triggers might have actually taken place.
Right.
As an example, too, with somebody who is maybe diagnosed with something like Hashimoto's, which is hypothyroid, autoimmune related, it happens after a stressful event. So could have been a competition, it could have been a show, could have been having a baby, going through pregnancy, having a baby, super stressful on the body. It could have been if they did a marathon or an Ironman.
Yeah. So I will say this. I know that we live in such a culture that I think once we get diagnosed, with certain things, we become that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to sit around and be oh yeah, I'm cornea edema for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? But I think that or viral infection or whatever. I want to move past that and be okay, how do I, maybe if I can't revert this necessarily, but I can do everything I possibly can to be my best and not just adhere or let that overtake my life. And I've worked with some clients long time ago, but they had Hashimoto's. I have clients that have had lupus, PCOS, all these different things, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that's listening that has been diagnosed with this and it's just kind of uproot their whole life? Maybe now they only eat gluten-free and then they don't do this and they don't go out with their family anymore. They make all the different meals or whatever it is. Yeah. Would you say that these things can be reversed? These things can just be better? What would your advice be?
We have so much control over those types of conditions.
Yeah.
And even if there is a genetic component, because I hear that all the time, like my, mom, sister, aunt had Hashimoto's or PCOS. And while there might be that genetic component, it's the environmental triggers, nutrition, lifestyle, that cause it to actually express itself in the form of symptoms. So yes, you can put it into remission if we want to call it that.
Yeah.
At the very least, we could call it not dealing with those symptoms on a day-to-day basis in a way that they interfere with your life. And if symptoms do come up, you're more empowered because you know what's going on with your body. So you can make adjustments and understand like, okay, actually, for example, need to, take it a little bit easier this week, nourish my body more, get more sleep.
Yeah.
But also with things like, so say you were maybe just diagnosed with PCOS or you've been diagnosed with it for a while, or Hashimoto's as an example, I think women will go to their doctor and want to look for that diagnosis because they think it gives them answers.
Yeah.
And those answers will therefore make them feel better or their symptoms will go away.
Right.
But they don't. It's just an explanation for the symptoms that they're dealing with.
Yes.
IBS is another really good example. So it's basically saying you have all these digestive issues. We don't know exactly what's causing it, but it's called IBS because you're going to have to deal with this the rest of your life. And so whether it's with that or with PCOS, which essentially is you're not having regular ovulatory cycles.
Yeah.
And it can be driven by multiple factors. It can be driven by insulin resistance, blood sugar imbalances. It can be adrenal related, so stress. So lots of things tie into that. But the diagnosis itself doesn't tell you what you need to do necessarily.
Yes.
So with all of those, we have to get to the root cause. And that will then tell us how we can actually alleviate a lot of the symptoms or even reverse it.
Yeah.
And Hashimoto's as an example. I just had a client who she got her antibodies tested because her doctor at first wouldn't do antibodies because they're like, there's no reason to see if you have elevated antibodies. But she got the test done. Her antibodies were elevated. And so we've been practicing a lot of things around her lifestyle, especially she's prioritizing certain areas around her sleep, her movement, strength training, things like that. And also with her nutrition, she was like a chronic dieter, under-eater.
Yeah.
She was eating a lot of like processed refined carbs.
Yeah.
She was doing a lot of gluten, and not everybody has to remove gluten, but if there's an antibody component going on, we like to experiment with it.
Right.
So we did that and we trialed it for 3 months, got another test done, and her antibodies are, I think it was like 20 points less maybe, decreased a pretty good amount. So like just goes to show how you do have control over those types of things.
Yeah.
If you know what to do, what to focus on.
And I remember the client that like I'm thinking of specifically who had Hashimoto's, she lost I think like 60 pounds with me and then and changed her whole eating and just everything and like was off all her like medications that she had to be on or that was put on and just lives her life and you know what I mean? But just completely changed her lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I think that we get so stuck in this mindset of, okay, I checked off the boxes and I do this and I walk in and whatever. And they're like, I'm doing so much. And I know how that feels so exhausting because you're like, I'm doing so much but yet it's still not enough. So it's like, I really like that your approach is, we have to, I know you're doing a lot. Like I'm validating that. I want you to feel heard. I want you to feel seen. But there are these other things that you've either gotten stuck into a routine or regimen. And we just have to look at that because you may not know, like if you don't track that, if you don't know how much sleep you're getting, or you may say, yeah, I get 8 hours, but it's like, do you? And then maybe no, you only get 5, but you really think that, you know what I mean? So I think that we just are so caught up in all of that we just get so not complacent, but just regimented in the not the best, especially with stress.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of women also look first and foremost at nutrition and exercise, especially if their symptoms are influencing their weight and their body composition.
Yes.
So we look at nutrition and exercise and qualify that as doing everything. And then maybe a step beyond that is they're also doing a lot of supplements, which oftentimes are very random because they're just taking recommendations from things they see on social media, and it's not customized at all.
For sure.
Or it's not addressing their root cause. So that's why we have to go back to that. So the nutrition and the lifestyle, it's important to understand that there's more to it. And I say this often, it varies from person to person when they say I eat super healthy, and I'm like, but what is that by your
Exactly.
definition? Because it
Well,
varies.
that's like
so
saying like I'm
much.
successful.
Yeah. How do you
Cool.
define
Like,
success?
yeah, well, someone that's like a millionaire, you know, whatever, is gonna be like, are you though? You know, and then like
Yeah.
someone else that's like barely making it paycheck to paycheck is gonna be like, oh, but like, you know, again, it's so different. So I totally get that.
Yeah. And I say, I mean, there's a difference between eating healthy or eating clean, and which, I mean, the clean eating sort of style is very calorie conscious, low fat, like because you're focused on the aesthetic goal.
Yes.
Versus eating for female physiology and eating for like long-term
Oh,
health. And so people, I think, mix those up for each other. So they're like, I'm doing everything. I talked to a client earlier who she's worked with like 5 different macro coaches maybe and done like every sort of manipulation with her macros you can possibly think of. She has an autoimmune condition. She also has hypothyroidism, and she like cannot stop gaining weight no matter how much she works out.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show how you have to look beyond the food stuff. And from what she explained to me too, I was like, okay, we can definitely look at these certain areas.
Yeah.
Definitely need to look more at how you're managing blood sugar, like
Right.
how's insulin, things like that. So,
What is it about like body temperature?
oh yes.
Yeah. What is that, Bob?
Okay.
Like,
Love talking about, so basal body temperature
Yes.
or BBT is basically your body temperature upon waking. So like before you get out of bed, before you do anything, you can take your temperature. A lot of women will use it or are familiar with it as it relates to tracking fertility. So you
Yes.
can use it to track the different phases of your cycle, which is super cool. You know, actually when you're ovulating, when you're transitioning into that luteal phase, which is when your body needs a little bit more kind of TLC.
because like, how do you know? Like, does your temperature go up or does it go
Yeah.
down?
So it will. So first half of your cycle, it should be around 97.5.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing it can tell us if it's super low is slow metabolic function.
Okay.
So we would see it if you were like, you know, going through a cut, you're eating, I don't know, what's the calorie number? It's low.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the best.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay. So somebody who's not and they're intentionally or unintentionally, maybe they're eating like 1,200 calories a day. Their waking basal body temperature is probably going to be like 96.7. Like it's going to be really low.
Okay.
And that's because their body is conserving energy. Everything is slowing down.
Yeah.
And so that first half of the cycle, ideally it's 97.5 to 98.6.
Okay.
And then after ovulation, it's going to stay at that 98.6 range. So it's a little higher.
Gotcha.
Second half of the cycle is when you're producing progesterone. Progesterone increases body temperature.
Okay.
Also increases metabolic rate, which is kind of cool because you think about your metabolism is actually faster, which means you need more calories during that second half.
Okay.
And a lot of women will experience like cravings and low energy. And that's because their body's just like, hey,
that-
give me a
it's
little
that
bit more.
phase. Yeah. Okay.
And it could be like as simple as an extra 200 calories, nothing crazy.
And that's the phase after after you started your cycle?
So after you ovulate,
Okay.
that second half. Yeah.
So before you start your cycle.
Yes.
Okay.
So day 1 of your cycle is the first day of bleeding.
Okay. Gotcha.
Which I feel like like a lot of people, again, we're not taught this, like
Yeah,
in
no.
sex ed, we're just taught like don't have sex because you'll get pregnant basically.
Right, yeah.
But really day one of your cycle is bleed, and then you should bleed all the way up to like maybe day 5. Like that's what's considered normal, which I feel like we have to kind of define or explain that because a lot of women
Yes.
don't know what's normal.
Right.
And then you'll continue all the way up to day and this varies from person to person, but day 12 to maybe like 15-ish would usually be whenever you're ovulating.
Okay.
If you have that like 28-ish day cycle.
Right.
So you ovulate, and then after that, you'll see that increase in body temperature along with progesterone. And that's when you're in your luteal phase, which is whenever you're leading up to your period. And then as all your hormones decline leading up to your period, that's when you start to experience more of those like PMS sort of symptoms.
Okay.
And then you start bleeding again and it starts over.
Yeah.
So yeah.
if you're not though actually, because okay, and this may be a silly question, but like, so technically, am I still ovulating? Like I'm just not showing any of the symptoms or any of the other stuff that like comes with all that?
Yeah. Well, so it varies depending on the type of birth control that you're on.
Okay.
Right. So with the exception of like the non-hormonal IUD,
Yeah.
all other forms shut down ovulation.
Okay.
So you don't have those cyclical hormones, basically.
Okay.
But when you think about it, and a lot of people will say that they go on birth control, they feel worse. It's because they're still shutting down progesterone, and that's
Right.
like our anti-anxiety calming hormone.
Yeah.
So they don't have those same like ebbs and flows. So for somebody who's on birth control, I wouldn't do a Dutch test because
Okay.
everything's kind of flatlined.
Yeah.
Basically, it's synthetic hormones.
I see.
So with the copper IUD, it's basically increasing inflammation enough to not actually be able to conceive. So that's kind of like the mechanism
Right.
behind it. So you might have some of those fluctuating hormones, but it
Yeah.
still wouldn't be as much as if you have a natural cycle.
Right.
Given that you're not getting a period, though, you're probably not ovulating.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess like for long-term use, for someone's like, yeah, like that's like I'm going through what Danny's going through or whatever. Like, you know, because again, we want to take away the fear, right? We want to put more knowledge into all of this. So if they're like, but I'm trying to get pregnant, I want to have a baby, I am not on anything, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever, then would you say to them that like, that they still will be able to conceive most likely, unless obviously something, you know, with their history of their health or whatever, but like from that standpoint alone, would they be able to still conceive and like have a child and do all that?
Well, are you asking, so if somebody comes off of hormonal birth control and
Like
they
if
want to
they're
get
not
pregnant?
on anything, but they're not ovulating, like they're not.
Yeah.
Like use me for example.
Well,
like would
yeah.
that be something that could happen still, or is it like you go so many years and it's like, nah, sis, like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the female body is super cool, and
Yeah.
it's not to say that if you haven't gotten a period for whatever 3-5 years that you can never get a period. I think if
Right.
you're giving your body what it needs
Right.
to function the way that it should, which that's essentially what we're doing. We're like working against our female physiology with our
Right.
kind of go lifestyle. But you do have to be ovulating in order to conceive. So
Right.
if you're not ovulating,
yeah,
you're not going to be able to get pregnant. But with that, we also see a lot of women who might be ovulating and they still can't get pregnant.
Yeah.
And that more so has to do with the progesterone in the second half of their cycle.
Yeah.
Lots of other factors.
For
like
sure,
so
for
many,
sure.
but that's like kind of the basic first one that we like to check off is, are you
Gotcha.
actually like producing adequate progesterone? And to produce progesterone, you need adequate calories and fuel.
Yeah.
You need vitamins and minerals.
Right. With your vitamins, do you always say to people like, because I get asked this all the time, like, is a multivitamin better, or is it like the individual vitamins? Like,
Yeah.
what will you suggest?
Yeah. Well, multivitamins are a little complicated because there's so many out there.
Right.
And some of them can do more harm than good if it's kind of like everything but the kitchen sink. Because certain vitamins and minerals work together really well and other ones don't.
Right.
So if we're kind of just like trying to throw everything together, it might not be the best option. I will also just say, like, if it's in gummy form or like anything that tastes really, really good, it's probably not the best quality.
For sure. Yes.
But as kind of a general, and for women who have been on birth control for a really long time or are coming off of it, or they're just super depleted and they're showing that in signs of symptoms like fatigue, irregular periods, no period, can't sleep, things like that. Supplementing with a multivitamin can be helpful, or anything as close to like a whole food form as possible. So I usually recommend this, again, depending on their like blood work and their symptoms and stuff like that. But organ meats are super, super nutrient dense.
What is it?
Organ meats.
What do you?
I was just waiting to see what your face.
Yeah.
So,
Like, what are you?
yes. Okay. So great desiccated liver supplement can be really helpful.
Oh gosh, all I can think about is Joe right now, like eating some like raw liver or something gross.
Not raw liver. It's funny you say that because raw liver is actually like not what our body is meant to actually like process.
Right.
So yeah.
So
So desiccated liver.
Okay.
Liver capsules essentially
Got
is
it.
a great form of multivitamin. It has vitamins, minerals,
Okay.
all the things that you would need for healthy hormones.
Okay.
But also a really good quality prenatal, even if you're not trying to get pregnant.
Okay,
Prenatals
yeah.
are great multivitamins.
Yeah, when you were talking about this, I was kind of thinking like, would that be a thing? But okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, prenatals are great, and there's a handful of quality brands out there too. and specific things that you want to look out for too with the quality as well.
Yeah.
But those are usually a pretty safe bet if you want to supplement with something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, someone had actually asked. I want to kind of go back to real quick about the cycles syncing, like like. Should you tailor your workouts and food towards different phases? I don't know if you get that a lot, or
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I like talking about this because one, it forces you to understand that like you are a cyclical human and you should not feel the same way every single day of the week.
Right.
Like, and it's okay to feel differently.
Or your body should not look the same every single day of the week.
Yep.
Like let's make that normalized. That literally your body, like you can be more bloated, you can be more inflamed, you can weigh a little bit more, weigh a little bit less. Like I think that we were taught so many times again and again that it's like, be that number, I am that number, I am that picture, I am that video, I am the everything in that moment.
Yeah. Like we're robots.
Yes. And I look perfect. And this is my muscles, right? Like, but it's not. Like,
well, and on that note too, for clients who are weighing themselves and they're weighing themselves every single day and they're like, I like gained 2 pounds today. And I'm like, I don't care. Like that's not indicative of
it's irrelevant.
Fat loss.
Yeah.
And if you are going to weigh yourself, so what I like to do is compare it to where you are in your cycle. So for example, if you're going to weigh yourself on day 1, so day 1 of your period, then weigh yourself the following month on day 1 of your period. Because those are like, that's an accurate comparison.
Right.
And so, yes, your body weight can fluctuate.
Yeah.
Water retention fluctuates too, especially, again, during that luteal phase.
Yeah.
You're going to hold on to more water. But with the kind of like cycle syncing concept, it's essentially because our hormones, especially estrogen and progesterone, are changing throughout the month. And so generally, women will feel better around ovulation. That's when you're like, going to feel your strongest. You're going to feel most energized. You're also going to be the most outgoing.
Okay.
And when we think of it from like kind of a ancestral perspective too, that's whenever your body is like ready to reproduce. So it like makes sense that you're like feeling yourself. Exactly. So that's ovulation. And then luteal phase is kind of that like season where you might feel good at first, but then you kind of start to like retract more and more. And you kind of just want to like hibernate a little bit, like not go out, and you might feel a little bit more bloated. And there's, to a certain extent, right? Like if you're feeling really bloated or digestion is really off or you're not having regular daily bowel movements, that's a red flag. But we can look at like recognizing, okay, you're in this phase of your cycle.
Yes.
It's also a time where you don't want to push it as hard. So like if you have the option between sleeping a solid 7 hours or hitting the gym at 5 a.m.
Right.
I would prioritize the sleep, especially in that phase. Otherwise, it's going to come back to bite you, especially once your period hits. So,
and I think, again, it's a fine balance, too, for those listening, because it's like, I think the people like to run with stuff, right? So they may be like, okay, for that 6 days or whatever, I'm not working out at all. I'm sleeping, all day. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, and I have to acknowledge, too, there is kind of the trend around cycle syncing your workouts where, and this comes from somebody who like actually enjoys lifting and like understanding like progressive overload and using weights versus some of the recommendations will be like, this week you do Pilates, this week you do yoga, this week you do a boot camp class, this week you do a cycle class, like kind of all over the place. And I'm all about like moving your body in a way that you enjoy and it feels good to you.
For sure.
But I think still prioritizing movement even during that luteal phase.
Yes.
It might be you're lifting less, so like you're not going to add as much weight to the bar.
Correct. But then that's another thing too, is that like I think everyone's like, okay, progress has to be linear, but like guys, like it's okay if one time when you lift like a day that you lift is less weight than the other day that you lifted like or 3 weeks ago or whatever. Like I think sometimes a lot of my clients will be like, man, like I just didn't feel as strong today. Well, your body's going through stuff. Like it is continually doing that. So like that's normal. Like I don't, you know what I mean? You shouldn't feel like, you can lift 400 pounds every day.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and the cool thing, I guess more of an incentive too, to like want to get a regular cycle as well. And I look back to when I, again, didn't have a period for so long. I'm like, what was my body doing? I was somewhat robotic, just like going through the motions. But whenever we understand like where we are in our cycle and we're at the gym, like if I'm in my ovulatory phase, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to be able to squat more and feel really good and recover well and not have like crazy appetite later on. You can be more in tune with those things.
Right.
So, And on the other end, if you're in the gym and you're like, why do I feel so tired? Why do I feel so weak? Like, you're not weak.
No.
And the reason you feel tired is because your body needs more rest or nourishment or whatever it is.
Well, and then on top of that, you come into the LYB gym and you haven't eaten any food. And then you're like, I don't know why I feel so tired or why I feel like, like I'm not as strong. It's like literally there's so many things playing against you. Like the one thing we can control, because like, again, too, if their cycles are crazy and things like that, and they're maybe starting to look into all of that, it's like, what can we control? Grabbing a rice cake with some almond butter or whatever, or making a peanut butter sandwich and like smashing it before you get in.
Yep.
I've said so many times, I'm like, come in here and like, I don't care if you just pull out like grab the gold bar out of your pocket and start eating it. You know what I mean? Like, at least that means you have something on your stomach, because there were so many times that I like worked out and did not have any food in me, and I was lifting crazy amounts of weight, and like my body did not change. My body was under constant stress. My body was like in good stress, bad stress, all the things. And like I didn't see any results from that because again, I wasn't fueling properly.
Yeah. Well, and if you're training like an athlete, you have to fuel yourself like an athlete too. And I think the average female who wants to lose weight, they're training like an athlete maybe, or they're pushing themselves too hard in the gym, but they're not fueling themselves appropriately.
Correct.
And that will come at the expense of their metabolism. Their metabolism is going to slow down if they're constantly exercising more and eating less.
Right.
And also in addition to that, like speaking of not feeling great when you're actually working out, like that can tie into blood sugar too. So if you're having rice cake, almond butter before your workout, that's going to stabilize things a little bit more.
Right.
So that you're not like crashing. And if you ever feel like dizzy, lightheaded, or just like you have nothing left in the tank, like your blood sugar probably needs some support. Your muscles need more like glycogen and
all of that.
Yeah.
So no, I completely agree. And it's crazy how, it really does have to come down to fueling our bodies for that, And it's like, when you think about how a society has made it seem, it's like, they're like, telling you to fuel your body with pizza to like watch a movie. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But yet you want to go lift 200 pounds and deadlift, but you're not going to fuel your body for that. Like, so it's like there's such this disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Yep. So it's just so interesting to see and kind of look at that from, that perspective. So I have a couple questions from my clients I did want to ask you that went into like, so about, let's see, opinion on birth control use long-term for contraception, but mainly to manage intense cramping. Okay, like interrupts daily activities because they're bent over in pain. So basically she's asking, with pain level, like, is there a way to regulate pain level for like her cycles and stuff without birth control?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, just like recognizing how common that is too. I think a lot of women are debilitated by their periods. And it doesn't have to be that way, even though you've always dealt with it, your mom has dealt with it, your friends deal with it.
Right.
So like what's ideal for a cycle is if you're not on birth control leading up to your period, you have some PMS symptoms, but it shouldn't be enough to where you're like having to lay on your couch all day long with like a heating pad.
Okay.
So the fact that she has that debilitating of cramps is a sign of a hormone imbalance. So we can look back and see how can we support your hormones. And we can talk about that too, like the actual steps where we would start for that.
Okay.
But with hormonal birth control, I mean, if you're using it to manage that pain or you're trying to address that hormone imbalance, it goes back to you're essentially just suppressing your hormones.
Right.
So for her, we'd have to ask a lot more questions, like what she's doing around her nutrition, her lifestyle, her supplements, health history, all of that stuff to figure out how is it possible for her to have less pain leading up to her period. Okay. I will say, though, in the short term, if somebody does have symptoms that are so debilitating, interfering with their life, whether it's because they have really bad PMS, PMDD, cramps, maybe they have something like PCOS or endometriosis, and they're trying to get it under control, we can still address the hormone foundations, the nutrition, the lifestyle, stuff like that, maybe while being on birth control, just to help with those symptoms, and then we can transition off of it appropriately without, like, having to go cold turkey, because I've had clients do that before. They like cold turkey come off of birth control and they feel absolutely miserable. And so then they just go back on it. And it's like, how can we find that like good balance of supporting your body?
Okay. So I know that with a lot of the questions my clients asked, it's all going to relate back to kind of like like these steps that you want to talk about. So I would love for you to go into that for all of us because
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, for really anybody who's experiencing hormone-related symptoms, and whether that's like the obvious ones, which is kind of what we've been talking about around like your periods, your cycle, but also maybe the less obvious ones like difficulty sleeping, weight won't budge despite eating healthy, brain fog, fatigue, stuff like that, skin issues. All of them tie back to kind of what I would describe as, I guess, pillars or phases of your health that you can support. And that's what it's all about. It's about nourishment, not restriction, especially when it comes to hormones. Like extremes of any kind, whether it's like an extreme of super low carb or super low calorie or doing a ton of cardio, like your body's not going to love that. So we got to find the balance. And so the 4 different areas that look at actually supporting your hormones. One is, we've talked so much about like supporting nutrition, but it really is around optimizing nutrients. And I like using the term nutrients because it includes calorie intake, like how much you're actually eating, making sure you're eating enough. It includes minerals and vitamins. And if you've been on birth control too, those things might need a little bit more support. And then also your macronutrients. So making sure you're eating adequate protein, carbs, and also fats, which are like the building blocks for hormones, for sex hormones. So we have to make sure we're optimizing all those. The second step is blood sugar balance, which we didn't get a ton into that other than like, you know, insulin is a blood sugar hormone. And if you're on that blood sugar roller coaster day in and day out, it's a huge stressor on the body. Even if you feel good, like you don't feel stressed. And we talked a little bit about this, like you are somebody who can go, like get it done. But if you're on that blood sugar roller coaster, your body's going to be interpreting a little bit more stress than your brain's going to be interpreting. So that can have a downstream effect on all other hormones. So we want to make sure we're supporting blood sugar balance. And there are ways to do that with the macronutrient balance, also with the lifestyle, with the sleep, little things like getting sunlight, going out for walks. All of that can be really supportive for blood sugar. And then the third piece, we didn't talk too much about this, but gut health. And actually supporting good gut health, good digestion.
Because when you say good digestion, you said that many times. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, what is that? Can you like define that for people? Like,
again, something that like we don't even know what's normal because we don't talk about it that much. It's like not the conversation at the dinner table.
No, I never knew it was normal that you're supposed to. I don't even know if this is what you're gonna say, but like to use the bathroom like
you're supposed to poop every day.
Like every day. No one growing up told me that. And like I know that's like not the most attractive thing to talk about, but it's realistic. And so when people were like, I think one coach finally told me like, like you should be on that thing like every day. I was like, not a thing. Had no idea.
Well, and it is really common if you're not eating enough, you're not going to be going to the bathroom as frequently. And if things are slower with your thyroid hormones, which that basically regulates your transit time as well. So things are going to be slower there. But we see constipation for a lot of different reasons, but as it relates to hormones, thyroid definitely plays a role. The reason we want to go to the bathroom every day is because that's your body's way of getting rid of excess estrogen and just other toxins. Like that's how we carry it out of the body. It's either bowel movements or sweating, which is why like saunas are like detoxifying. Breathing also. So like your breath, your lungs, your skin, and your bowels. Like those are our body's way of getting rid of toxins. And if we're not getting rid of them, it's just recirculating, which can increase a lot of inflammation and lead to other issues. So
if you're like, because I feel like this might be a question for somebody listening, but like if you are, let's say that somebody is losing weight still and like, or like building muscle and like seeing changes in their body, can they still have thyroid problems that like, and still have like all of these problems that like you're saying that like, because I feel like a lot of it's a bit backwards. It's like, okay, thyroid problems, and then like they don't have, or they don't see changes in their body, right? Or like people come to you and they're like not seeing the weight loss, and so then and so you're like, okay, it's thyroid, this or whatever. But like, let's say they are seeing changes, but they also have these issues too. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's not like one or the other. So they could see changes, and we see people at like what would be considered a healthy body weight, but they can still have hormone related issues.
Yeah.
So it's not like it has to be one or the other. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking.
Because I think that some people are going to like, maybe they come see you like after this stuff kind of crashes and burns. You see what I'm saying? Like, and so that's why I'm trying to say, like, I think that people are going to wonder like what cues, like how can they know if like maybe they have like a regular cycle, but then maybe like they do have that midday crash, like it's normal, right?
Yeah.
Or that the stressor is like, I think a lot of my women that I train are, and I know they're so high functioning with like all their stressors and their anxiety and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if like I don't know, how would they,
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
Well, and usually it takes something for somebody to come to me where it's like, okay, this is like really interfering with my life.
Yes.
So what do I do? But I think you're kind of asking about like, what about that in between where like you don't feel great, but like you're not sure if it's your hormones or not. And I always say that it's not a matter of like if it's your hormones, if you're not feeling 100%, it's just what hormones, like where do we need more support? Understanding that hormones are supposed to fluctuate. It's not a matter of it just being like high all the time or low all the time.
Right.
And they all work together. They're basically like chemical messengers in your body, like telling it what to do. And so if you don't feel 100%, whether it's with your energy, with your, mental clarity, maybe you have brain fog all the time, or you're noticing things related to your thyroid, like you're losing hair, your skin is dry all the time, or you're not sleeping, maybe you have constipation and bloating constantly, we have to look at hormones no matter what. So it's like, if you're not feeling optimal and 100%, and you can feel that way, maybe not perfectly all the time, not saying that, but understanding what it feels like to feel good, we have to look at your hormones.
Well, and I think that too, when we say want to feel good, I think that some people use external things, right? So they have like excess food to make them feel good, or excess amount of working out or whatever, or drinking or whatever. So it's all these external things versus the internal like issues. And so that's something too that like I really love about everything, the content you put out and things like that, because it really is diving deep in that. Because here's the thing, guys, like people have like, oh yeah, like I can handle it on my own. But yet like, no, everything she just said, like I don't want to do any of that on my own. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I want someone to tell me like what vitamins to have, or look at like what the minerals are, and how like the specifics of stuff. Like, and that's how it is with like the training and like how I provide that for clients and stuff like that. And and with their food and things like that, it's like all of it, like it's a lot. Like in most of the people listening, I will venture to say, I mean, I probably have a good mix of like guys and girls, but like for my females listening and even for the men, like it's just, we are all operating at such a high capacity of so many things, and caring for other people and caring for ourselves and putting ourselves first and like doing our jobs the best we can and getting the movement in, all these things. It seems like so much, but like when it comes to your true health and having a real healthy lifestyle, like you need support. And you can say that you've gone to these doctors or whatever, but like, again, they're going to just give you the base of like, okay, we've done this. This is what it is. That's it. So you can't expect them to do everything for you. And then it comes to that point where you have to take it upon yourself. And I think, being 30 now, I can like really resonate with that like you have to take it behind yourself. Like stop waiting for like it to get so bad, or for someone to just tell you like you need to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I think it's the difference between somebody who like is trying to DIY it, and they usually will DIY it for like 5 or 6 years straight and like maybe not even figure it out, or then have more issues, versus actually getting somebody to help you with it, because they can see things and they know things that you don't know or you can't find from like a Google search or Instagram Reels. And so having somebody to put those pieces together and look at like long term for you is so much more beneficial.
Well, and in my life too, I just don't want to like, I don't know. I guess for me, it's like, I just want to not just like deal with like this stuff. Like I want to figure it out and like not just, it's not just going to go away.
Well, that's okay. But the difference between like, so somebody like you who is more of a, I don't know if you would identify as like a perfectionist, but like you run your own business.
No side commentary. Thank you. Leave a comment on this YouTube if you agree with Megan or if you agree with Logan.
I gave you the benefit of the doubt. So the people who really care about all of the things, right? And like, we're particular, we're type A, we're high achievers, we have our own businesses, that type of thing. We care more about the way we feel, not only because it like influences our, day to day, what we can accomplish, but we don't accept certain things as normal. So like you don't accept feeling like crap every day as normal. You're like, I know I can feel better and I just want to know how to do that. Whereas some people, and they're probably not the ones listening to this. They're not the ones who are like reaching out for help from either one of us.
Right.
They are like, it's fine to have IBS and feel bloated every day, or like PCOS, like this is just my diagnosis. I have to deal with it. I can't do XYZ because like this is my condition. Versus the people who like do want to, I mean, I know it sounds cheesy, but like feel more empowered and like take action and be in the driver's seat of their health. Yeah. They're the ones who are going to say like, okay, there are answers out there. Just have to figure out like what they are and then what to do from there.
Yeah. When you said that, like I literally went to a mental image of myself when I was in college, and I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, whatever. I'm sitting on a Tuesday morning at like 9 a.m. and like, I don't even know how I got, it must've been like 11 o'clock, whatever. Anyway, I used to sleep in a lot, but I was eating like straight up like calzone, just like a calzone. And I was sitting there, I was like, wow, I feel like shit and I hate this. Yeah. What am I doing? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I it was just like, I wanted to move. I wanted to do things, but I was just so in this depressive state of like, I don't know. And then I was just in there like, yeah, this has to change. You know what I mean? But that was just, I like hit that rock bottom, And so I really try to help people to get before they get to that rock bottom. And even with the prep and stuff, I mean, I was on the stairs and it was like everything in my body shut down. I could literally feel it shutting down. But that's because I'm so in tune with myself that I knew that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And but that's taken years of practice and years of going through different lifestyles and things like that to be like, man, something's wrong. But do you know how validating it was to have said this 4 months ago that something was wrong? And then finally it come full circle and they'd be like, oh yeah, actually this is what happened. Yeah. And you're like, I knew it, but you hate that it had to get to that point. Yeah. But it's also like, dang. So I really encourage you, if you're listening, you're watching, whatever at home, please reach out to Megan. Please reach out to me, in terms of any help that you need within your healthy lifestyle journey. And if you're even going through this and you're just like, man, I just want support and guidance. I mean, I know you have different programs and you have all these, different things that you can offer. And even just watching your Instagram, I've already learned so much and it can be overwhelming. I'm sure anybody listening to this talk right now, if they're meal prepping right now or whatever they're doing, while I listen to podcasts, what I do, but or on a walk, you're like, dude, what were the phases? What are the things? Whatever, but they can find all that, on your Instagram. You're pretty, on your website too, I'm sure. Yeah. But
I do a lot of free workshops and stuff like that too. Okay. And there's stuff buried in my YouTube channel as well around mini trainings and things like that. Yeah. But at the end of the day too, it can seem very confusing, but if you have somebody guiding you through it, it's less confusing. And I will say, I think sometimes people hesitate to reach out because they think it's going to require so much. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they'll get a lot of time back because they're going to feel better. Sure. And they also are no longer wasting time on things that don't make a huge difference anyways. Right. So it's simpler and it's easier than they think it might be.
Well, it's like a gym analogy. It's like going into the gym, let's say a Planet Fitness or whatever, and seeing all the machines, all the things, and feeling so overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, and then you're just stuck on the treadmill. Yep. And you're just, which again is good for you, whatever, but you're just,
but maybe not as effective as doing some of the weights that you need to do.
You meet up with me at the LYB and I'm just telling you, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing whatever, and you're in, out, done. And you feel more empowered, you feel stronger. So it's it's okay in this day and age and just in general, but as a female to ask for help. And you're having more empowered females taking upon these roles like we do to help other people. So it's I want people to really acknowledge that because they still continue to keep going back to no offense to men, but like to the male doctor that's been in the same or the same coach that's doing the same thing for so long. And it's like, okay, that's great, but we have to evolve. Like we have to adapt. We have to continue to keep learning. And so that's why it's so rewarding and so awesome to find someone like you, like that I just feel like is actively doing that. And even to you, you may be like, oh, this is so simple now. It's like, you know, I know whatever, you know, and like how I am with like movement and stuff like that too. But there's always so much that we can still learn. There's always so many things that we can take away. And so it is really special. And like, I really appreciated getting to have you on today. And so I do want to ask you, you know, in terms of your, you know, just like, you know, a little bit of a quick background real quick, like where are you from? You know, what's kind of your aspirations, goals? Like, what do you have kind of coming up?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that. And I think the education component is so huge and it's lacking. And that's why I like, even on this, I'm like, don't teach too much, like don't educate, but like that's ultimately what I feel like is gonna benefit a lot of women and help them to be in the driver's seat of their health. So where am I from? So I'm an Army brat. So I grew up all over the place.
Okay, cool.
But I've been in Nashville now for almost 2 years.
Okay.
Moved here from the like Northern Virginia, DC area, which is where I was for like 7 years. So that's kind of the TLDR version of where I'm from. Aspirations, gosh, where do I start? Because as an entrepreneur too, I feel like we have all of these different kind of like so aspirations. But
right now, are you out of a space or is it just all online?
So it's all online, which I really enjoy. I thought about, and this was like pre-COVID, having an actual like brick and mortar office space, which would be great for, you know, people locally. But with the virtual space, it allows me to work with people all over. And also with the kind of like educational content that we put together for our actual program for our clients in that portal, which you kind of saw like a sneak peek of that. It's very like virtual. So there's like videos and, you know, handouts, transcripts, stuff like that. So it helps to do that from like a virtual lens as well. And with like our group coaching calls, we have women from literally all different like sides of the coast, and we all get together for our, you know, group sessions. So that's really nice. But so it's all online, and just continuing to grow that practice. That's really my goal. And I want to get to a place. I have one other practitioner right now who works under me, and she does a lot of the one-on-one client work. And then I run the Well Nourished program, which is kind of like a hybrid between one-on-one. So you're getting those sessions with me. We do lab testing, stuff like that. And then you also have access to the group coaching sessions and the full like curriculum and blueprint that like walks you through all those different phases. Supports you in all the right areas, gets you to focus on the right thing.
And that's kind of the program I'm in. Is that what you're doing? Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. I love that. And so the nurse practitioner you found, so I guess is your goal to just continue to keep getting, like growing that team? Yes.
So I would love to grow my team, ultimately get to a place where I can like only wear the CEO hat and like not do all of the things. And also I am continually growing in terms of like my clinical skills too. So like one of the programs that I'm in helps me with the clinical aspect of things. I'm in a group with other practitioners, which is super cool because if we have like a more complex client come to us and we're like not sure what to do, we collaborate with each other. We like get everybody's eyes on it. So that's super cool. And having those mentors also, which I'm sure you understand the importance of it too. It's like also the equivalent of, you know, people need to ask us for help if they want to be able to do something. I'm constantly asking business
100%.
mentors, other practitioners for help. So, so that's a huge piece as well. But I would love to grow my team more and hopefully get even more specialized with different areas too. So the practitioner who's under me right now, she specializes more in like the perinatal kind of like either trying to conceive or postpartum area. I work with a lot of women who are in kind of like their 20s, 30s, 40s-ish maybe, still focusing on, again, like they're like the type A perfectionists who want to do all the things, but they're struggling with their, you know, energy, weight, digestion, hormones, those types of things. So,
Well, very cool. I love that. And I love, my biggest thing is I always want people that I can, people that I value that my clients can also like utilize as resources. That's why I got my massage therapist, chiropractor, you know, all the different things. So I definitely want them to reach out to you and everything like that. And so if you ever need any movement programs or anything like that,
for sure,
we'd love to have your people.
That's what I was thinking. I do have local clients too, Nashville. So definitely could benefit from a little one-on-one with you.
I love that. And what I do too to help, you know, women feel, and men too, but women mostly to feel empowered is like with my online programming and things like that, is also another part of it, because I know we are so busy and I know people are just trying to like get in, get out and things like that. So for those who can't come to the LYB, I do like customized tailored programs for them. And so they have that accountability and the support group. That's been really, you know, really cool. And also doing like right now we're in the 10-week challenge. It's a 5 Way You Want challenge, which is really special because it's people from all over, like you said, which is nice to get to be able to reach different states and different communities, but like all different bodies, all different sizes, different levels, with just a more goal of just moving on the weekend. It's a 10,000 step goal over the weekend.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then, and it's 10 weeks. I'm planning on that 10. And then, also like they're doing a mindful piece, which is a Fight for What You Want post every Friday. So they have that intention of like, well, why am I fighting? Like it's week 7. I don't want to do this stuff anymore. Like on the weekends, I want to sleep, you know, or something like that. And it's like, why am I going to get out there and walk? And it doesn't have to be a run. It can be a walk or whatever. And they can like look down at their band and be like, oh, okay, because I'm fighting for what I want, which is my kids, my health, my grandkids, all those things. So getting that component in there as well, you know, and then I have different sponsor prizes. So there's a prize every week, so it helps incentivize them to stay on it, and so it gets us right up before before Thanksgiving. So like my goal would be that someone feels successful after the challenge, and then they get into Thanksgiving, and then maybe they wake up that morning and they do a 5K, they do a turkey trot, they go for a walk, they, you know, because that's what always benefited me. And I felt more successful doing that before a day of, you know, food and fuel and family and whatever. But just like, again, those practices that can like help with longevity and help truly change the lifestyle versus let's just do 75 hard. And then, you know what I mean?
I was just going to say that. I was like thinking 75 hard in my head.
I'm so over it. I'm so over it. And like, I get it. I get it.
Like
it's
a moderate
a thing.
365.
Great marketing. Whatever. Like
that sounds like a great challenge. I like that it leads up to Thanksgiving as well. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people will like put it off. Yeah. And so then they kind of feel like crap going into the holidays, but it's like, why not get ahead of it?
Well, and now? I'm just over the whole like, okay, on Monday. Okay, on this day. Yeah. Okay, on the New Year day. Like everyone always thinks that New Year's is when I hit like my most clients, stuff like that. It's like, no, it's not. It's,
January's dead.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, again, those are the people that are not coming to see me. The people that are coming to see me are the ones that are really trying to work. They're trying to fight for what they want, get their movement in, love their body. Like it's very comprised in all of that because they're just over the quick fixes. And I'm like, if you just stay the course, like you will get there. Yeah. So I know that, you know, anybody listening that feels, you know, overwhelmed or things like that, what can we give them as like a quick, like just starter tip, you know, to maybe it can be related to stress or, you know, whatever you want to say for you. But
yeah, well, I think if you are experiencing symptoms, instead of like trying to chase those symptoms or seeing those symptoms as an issue, ask yourself, like, why is it happening in the first place? Maybe reflecting on what got you here. Yep. And it might not be super obvious to you, which is where you can reach out and we can figure out what's going on. But kind of identifying why you feel the way you do versus like, what is wrong with me? Like your body's not broken. You don't need to fix anything. You just need to figure out like what your body is asking for. Yeah. So that can be a really good place to start. And I'll say this, if you follow me on Instagram, I have a metabolism and hormone assessment. And it's basically like a checklist, like an audit that can tell you like if and what is out of whack. Yeah. Because that can give you a little bit of a starting point too. So, you know, like, okay, I actually really need to support my cortisol and my stress hormones. Like I'm not feeling hungry first thing in the morning. Maybe I'm running on stress hormones. So I need to give myself a little bit of fuel. Yeah. So little things like that you can start tweaking. But yeah.
I do want to ask this last question with the metabolic rate, because I have all my girls, they went and did like assessments before the challenge and stuff. And I have them do that quarterly because I don't really agree with weighing every day. You know, I think it's irrelevant. Yeah. So with those assessments, they can be kind of, you know, intense. And so people always ask me like the metabolic rate. I always tell them, like, I don't ever give them a range that they should shoot for. I'm just like, it's based on your body, and we're just always trying to increase it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a credit score. Like, it takes a really long time to increase, but like it can with strength training, different thermogenics, eating more throughout the day, stuff like that. Is there like a range where you're like, this is like a healthy metabolism for a female, or is it always different because of age, weight, height, all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely varies based on kind of what we hear or what you might like plug into a calculator, right? Like age, weight, height, activity levels. Genetics can play a role in that as well. Muscle mass, all of those things.
Yeah.
But that's why I like looking at the basal body temperature and like where you're at. If you're in that like 98.6-ish range, that's a good sign that your metabolism is functioning as it should.
And would you say over a course of a week testing that for like the
Yeah, I mean, I recommend doing it at least for 5 days straight.
Okay.
And then if you are trying to track it throughout the whole entire month, like looking at the like variations throughout your cycle, then you would obviously do it for the full month as well.
Okay.
But even within a few days, if you're like, I'm going to track it for 3 days and see where I'm at, like that'll tell you right off the bat. If you're like 96.5, like you got some work to do versus, 98, that's going to be in a better range.
Yeah, I'm literally going to go buy a thermometer like now.
I will. I will say I recommend getting a BBT thermometer because it's to the 100th degree. So it looks at 97.77 because even those like subtle fluctuations in
it matters.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so BBT.
Yep.
Okay.
They're like, you can get really fancy ones, but you can also get like one for $10 off Amazon. So.
Dude, ordering it now.
Yeah. Yep.
My goal is by the time this podcast goes out that we've gone through all of this stuff. Like have the Dutch test done. We have all that. So that's like my checklist with everything. So that way, like going through the fall, going into holidays, like at least like having having a little bit of more empowerment with that.
Yeah.
And just learning more about yourself. Because again, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about and what a real healthy lifestyle is about. It's not about just dropping the weight and just looking good. It is about, yes, you want to look aesthetically pleasing, right? You want to be your most confident self. But like, how do we do that? By continuing to learn more about ourselves. Yeah. So I love this.
Well, I think it's good to find the balance between supporting your internal health and external health because you can have one but not the other. And that can go both ways.
Yeah,
so
for
we
sure.
want to support the inside too.
Well, I like to ask this question, and I haven't. I kind of been slipping on it, so I wanted to ask.
Oh no, what is it?
No, it's good. It's always fun. But like, what's something that you love about your body, and it can be about your body and also about yourself, just in general, as a female.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I do like how in tune I am with my body. I feel like I listen to it very well, and it was not always that way. Okay. But when things are off, I know, and I also can usually pinpoint why they're off. That. So that's a big one. I really like, we haven't even talked much about like my like workout fitness kind of background, but I do like the way that, and maybe this just comes from like having all the background in training and stuff like that, but how strong I feel whenever I'm in the gym. Yeah. So being able to move in a way that feels good, not like my body is aches and pains and things like that. So
I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for coming on today.
Thank
I really
you for
appreciated it.
Yep.
And can't wait to see how this journey progresses.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks. All good? Yep. Yay. Okay, do you want to come run out to the gym? I'll show you.
Sure, absolutely.